Hey folks, everything good out there? Before we dive in, let me just get something straight real quick. What you're about to hear is analysis and perspective. It's not inside info, not breaking news, and not any official announcement from anyone inside the Denver Broncos or the NFL. Everything I'm gonna comment on comes from public info, league patterns, and game reads. Nothing here replaces official statements, press conferences, or formal decisions from the organization. With that clear, let's talk about where the Broncos seem to be right now, and why this offseason moment could say a lot about what's coming into 2026. The 2025 season wrapped up not too long ago, and we're already officially in the offseason. The Super Bowl is still fresh in everyone's mind, and for anyone who followed the playoffs closely, the final outcome wasn't exactly surprising. Now, like always happens this time of year, the focus naturally shifts to the future. Rankings, projections, debates, and expectations start popping up everywhere. What's been catching my eye the last few days are the updates to the NFL Power Rankings. Not as absolute truth or something to follow like a rule, but as a gauge of the outside perception of the Broncos' current spot. Depending on the source, the team shows up in pretty different positions. In some lists, they pop up among the league's best. In others, it's more cautious, a bit lower down. That in itself is interesting, because it shows the Denver Broncos are back in relevant discussions after years of instability. There's no locked-in consensus yet, but there is respect. And that already marks a big shift from the franchise's recent past. This variation in the rankings brings up an inevitable question. Is this growing respect a direct reflection of what was shown on the field? Or is it just the typical offseason noise? That hype that usually inflates expectations before the ball starts flying again? To try and answer that, you gotta look carefully at what the 2025 season really was. In my read, it was a season that could be defined as almost. There was real progress, high-level games, and moments where the Broncos looked fully capable of taking on any opponent in the league. At the same time, some limits that still need to be overcome became pretty clear. The team made the playoffs, competed, showed organization and identity, but ended up getting hit by factors that are part of football. Injuries happen, especially in key positions, and when they hit at decisive moments, the landscape changes fast. The absence of the starting quarterback in a critical game completely shifted the offense's dynamic. Not as an excuse, but as the reality of the sport. The team responded with effort, discipline, and competitiveness, but the offense lost flow, quick reads, and the ability to punish in short windows. That doesn't erase what was built, but it helps explain why there are such different reads on this roster's real ceiling. If there's one point where pretty much all the outside analyses converge, it's the defense. No matter the exact spot in the rankings, the Broncos' defensive unit was widely recognized as one of the most consistent in the league throughout 2025. There was constant pressure on opposing quarterbacks, discipline against the run game, and efficiency in perimeter coverage. That didn't just show up in stats, but in how the team behaved on the field. The defense rarely looked disorganized or lost, even against dynamic offenses. Players like Pat Surtain II, Zach Allen, and Nick Bonito form a core that impacts the game in different ways. Surtain acts as a true shutdown corner, limiting options and forcing quarterbacks to hold the ball longer. Allen dominates the interior defensive line with strength and technique, while Bonito brings explosion off the edge, creating pressure in crucial moments. This goes beyond individual talent. It's collective identity. In several games against strong opponents, the defense kept the team competitive even when the offense wasn't fully clicking. It forced turnovers, created short fields, and controlled the pace of games. From a roster building standpoint, that's extremely valuable. Keeping this defensive core should be a clear priority in free agency. Losing key pieces doesn't crumble everything right away, but it creates gaps that are tough to fill in the short term. Elite defenses don't just appear out of nowhere. They're built with continuity, communication, and mutual trust. When that's lost, it takes time to rebuild. That's why the 2026 offseason is so important for preserving that identity. When the conversation turns to the offense, the picture gets more complex and reflective. Even with the quarterback healthy for most of the season, the offensive production was average in terms of scoring and explosiveness. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't dominant either. When you compare it to the teams that advanced further in the playoffs, a pattern shows up clearly: explosive plays. Teams that can score quick, change a game's momentum with a single play, and punish defensive mistakes tend to have an edge in January and February. The Broncos were middle of the road in that regard. There were flashes, especially in the run game when the roster was full, but consistency was lacking throughout the season. The injury to the main backfield piece exposed a common NFL problem, which is over-reliance on a single player. Without depth, the run game loses its threat. Defenses adjust, stack the box, and force the offense to become one-dimensional. That showed up in longer drives, trouble converting third downs, and fewer quick touchdowns. None of that's irreversible, but it all needs careful attention in the offseason. Talking about the quarterback, the scenario calls for balanced analysis. What's been shown so far points to a player who executes the system well, makes good decisions most of the time, and shows growing maturity in reading defenses. That's already a big positive. Like with pretty much every young quarterback, the next step is in consistency and the ability to punish defenses with longer passes when the opportunity arises. That kind of growth doesn't happen in isolation. It depends directly on adequate protection, receiver separation, and play calls that create favorable mismatches. If that development keeps going, the offense naturally levels up. If it stalls, the risk is getting stuck in that middle zone between a competitive team and a truly dominant one. That's where the structure around the quarterback makes all the difference. A balanced roster lets the quarterback play within the system, without needing to carry everything alone. That reduces forced errors and boosts efficiency in critical moments. In this whole process, the head coach's role is central. The track record shows an experienced, winning, and extremely detail-oriented coach. Someone who values efficiency, error control, and clean execution. At the same time, the current NFL demands constant adaptation. Defenses evolve fast, study tendencies, and exploit predictability. That's why adjustments like more pre-snap motion, rhythm variations, well-designed RPOs, and situational aggressiveness on fourth downs can make a difference. It's not about abandoning identity, but expanding it. Tweaks like that, if they happen within the team's philosophy, can add layers to the offense without compromising stability. With free agency approaching, the challenge becomes balance. There's room for moves, but not for extravagances. That requires precise choices. On defense, the priority is maintaining continuity and depth, avoiding the unit losing intensity over the season. On offense, adding explosiveness and versatility seems essential. A faster receiver to stretch the field, a more complete tight end who contributes both in blocking and the air game, or reinforcements on the offensive line could have a direct impact on the team's overall performance. These decisions don't just affect the 2026 season. They influence the entire competitive window for the roster. Teams that mess up at this point usually pay the price for years, whether with heavy contracts that limit flexibility or gaps that force premature rebuilds. That's why reading this offseason right is so important. Looking at the franchise's recent history, the Broncos went through tough cycles after the last title. There were constant quarterback changes, frequent identity shifts, and a lack of clear direction. Today, the picture looks different. There's a more visible plan, a consolidated defensive identity, and a quarterback developing within a stable system. That doesn't guarantee titles, but it creates something essential in an NFL franchise: positive predictability. It's the difference between improvising year after year and building something with continuity. Thinking about scenarios for 2026, it all comes down to conditions. If the quarterback keeps evolving, if the offense gains more explosiveness, and if the defense stays healthy, the Broncos enter next season as a team capable of competing at a high level week in and week out. If those pieces don't fit, the risk is getting stuck in solid but frustrating campaigns, with early playoff exits. That's why this offseason works as a true inflection point. The decisions made now will directly influence the team's ceiling in the coming years. In the end, The Broncos are on a clear path of ascent, not based just on hype, but on gradual building. The defense already works as a reliable anchor. The offense is in the process of evolving. The organizational structure seems more aligned than in past seasons. Now, it all depends on executing the right decisions in the coming months, both on and off the field. That's what makes this moment so interesting to follow, especially for anyone watching the team with the more analytical eye. And you? What do you think? Can the offense make the leap in 2026? Or does it still need more pieces around the quarterback to reach another level? Can the defense sustain that performance standard for a whole season? Drop your opinion in the comments. Let's chat about it. See you next time.